Hello there. Welcome to another episode of the Crypto Star Wars Fans channel. I'm your host, Sean Lee. Today, we're going to talk probably less about crypto and more about Star Wars. And that's really the reason why I have my esteemed guest, Kion, here today with me. As you can see, he is an avid Star Wars fan just like myself. And we're going to take a look at some of the credit systems within the Star Wars universe, and also the financial systems that we have today in our world, but also more importantly, how it plays into various developments that we're seeing already happening in the crypto side. There are a lot of parallel, there are lots of similarities, lots of areas where, there are the practices that are being made and mechanisms that are being created that seems to mimic the crypto world very, very well. So that's what Kion and I are going to talk about. But before we dive into that, I'm going to ask Kion to give a quick intro about himself, the company that he's working with, which is a partner of Algorand, which I was very privileged to be sitting on one of the podcasts with their founder and CEO, Mark, last year. So, Kion, maybe you can take it away with a brief intro.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thanks for having me, Sean. I really think that the two things I love talking about most are crypto and Star Wars. So this is the perfect niche of a podcast. You got me on a target audience off the bat. But yeah, I'm part of the AIKON team, and I'm an account executive with AIKON. And we're just really excited about, bringing cross-chain identity to different blockchain ecosystems. One of the milestones we hit recently that we're really excited about is we have over 150K new or network accounts on the Open Rights Exchange. And so, we're just really excited to be building. We have we're growing our ecosystem, really building out our products. And so 2022 is going to be a really exciting year. Cool. It's going to be great.
Cool. I mean, when I first learned about AIKON, obviously, your identity solution, but to the layman, it may not mean all that much. So when I first learned about it, I asked Mark, how would you actually describe it? What is the easiest way to think about it? He's like, well, crypto is actually not as easy to onboard as most people think, right? Because you kind of need to know what you're doing just in case you do something wrong. And remembering keys and storing it in safe places and all these alphanumeric numbers, most people just don't deal with that, right? People deal with passwords, and passwords are usually probably 8 letters long or whatever it is. So there's a very simple way to leverage the AIKON technology to use things like Facebook and Google, email addresses and whatnot as a way to get in. And you guys will manage all of the keys in a very secure manner. So I really like that. I think more technologies and more enabling tools needs to be available, just like you guys, because otherwise, crypto is never going to go mainstream because it's too hard for people to understand.
That's absolutely right. And one of our biggest focuses, kind of like our missions, are to help the bridge of mass adoption, right? We want to help set up the mass adoption when people come from the Web 2 world to move over to Web 3, make it as easy as possible to interact with the apps on multiple chains. We're really big believers in a multi-chain future. So you said it better than I could. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Make it simple for
Awesome.
Incoming users.
Awesome. So I'm going to create a link to the AIKON website and the applications down in the bottom. So any of you that are looking at it, feel free to take a look. These guys are doing amazing work. So let's talk about Star Wars, and let's talk a little bit about history, and let's try, let's just kind of play it interactive here, right? Throughout all of the movies and all the TV series, there's this thing called the Galactic Credit Standard, right, or the CRED, or sometimes I think they're referred to the denaries, right? I've always wondered, who created this credit? Who's managing it? Is it continuing on throughout the entire kind of timeline that we know of? And have things started branching off because of various different conflicts and so on and so forth? What I find most interesting is the more I read about it and the more I watch the movies and the TV series over again and again, I find there's so much similarities, towards what we do, right? What's your view in terms of this credit system? Do people use it in gambling parlors? They use it obviously to buy everyday food. And so what's your view about that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think is really cool, in the whole EU and the Star Wars ecosystem, is there's a lot of individual ecosystems, right? It's all spread out. There's different planets. Right. And one of the things I always thought of is we have a standard, but a lot of planets will kind of have their own currencies as well. And so it's like, how do they interact with each other, right? That must have been like a challenge that they face. And it really reminds me of, in the crypto asset world, the bridges that we have and the way that different chains are able to interact. So I think it is really interesting to see those comparisons and like kind of have the imagination of like, how did it work? Like, what were the fine details in the Star Wars world that we can look at, like that we kind of see in our ecosystems?
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? I was doing some reading the other day, kind of prepping for this, and I saw the Galactic Credit System was created. It was widely used within the Star Wars universe, and it was the credits were predominantly backed by a single entity, right? It was the Intergalactic Banking Clan, right? Those really weird looking aliens.
IVC.
And it was interesting because you think about a universe as large as kind of the Star Wars planetary system, and you have one group that are managing it all. And the problem with that is, as the war kind of went on during the Clone Wars, they were playing on both sides.
Right.
So that really showed a centralized system in terms of the deficiencies and also the gaming aspect that can really happen behind the scene, right?
Right, and I think that's one thing is like, especially with like the first three, episode 1, 2, and 3 being about the fall of the Republic and up the Empire.
Right.
I would love to like be able to see like what roles did a centralized currency, like a centralized system, play into that where it was so easy to overturn. Like I'm sure that was part of Palpatine's plan. Is really like right that the currency had to be a major part of that, right?
Yeah. I also remember There was a couple of episodes, I think it was during the Clone Wars, that talked about how the banking clan was actually going bankrupt. They're going default, right? They ran both sides for so long they couldn't actually do it. So that's why what's his name? The separatist guy leadership.
Dooku, Grievous.
Dooku and Dooku and Wotan Ball and that whole crew, they went in and they wanted to control it, right? They wanted to make sure the interest rates on both sides is favorable more to the separatist side. So you can almost see that the problem with a centralized system, with just a few figureheads that are in that kind of that round quorum that they have, to be basically deciding everything, and it's almost like. Can I dare I say it? It's almost like the Fed with a few people in there determining interest rate not only for the U.S. but really the rest of the world.
Right, absolutely. I would love to see what that would have been like had we done it in a DAO, right? Like, could we run this as a DAO? I mean, that could be a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah. I'm sure the DAO's system probably existed, and of course, once the Clone Wars continue on and it got inflicted with many more planets being part of the conflict, then all of a sudden a lot of the planets in the Outer Rim started thinking, why are we doing this? Why are we part of this? Why don't we just create our own currencies? And then when I was reading that, then I thought, actually, that's interesting. It's almost like in our world, you have, the reserve currencies, and of course it's in all the news today because of what's happening in Europe, the sanctions and all of that. But you basically have planets that, because they have no other choice, so they went another route. They created their own currency. So,
right.
You and I talked about this before. It was like, all these blockchain protocols creating new alternatives because the current system is, I wouldn't say is entirely broken, but it can definitely be improved upon. Right. And I think that aspect is maybe because the Star Wars story at the end of the day was created by human, right? So we're probably taking a lot of our real world experiences and trying to map it in there. You probably see something very similar. I mean, your project, you work with all the different chains, right? So there's various different assets that you got to manage, and you have to make sure that you're able to interconnect all of them, right?
That's absolutely right. And that's kind of what I was thinking is like, because there is difficulty in bridging and connecting and be able to manage multiple assets with one solution or, in one ecosystem. And so it's like, that was my first thought is like, wow, with all the different chains, like in the Star Wars ecosystem, how did they manage? I would have loved to kind of like see, not in the movies, but in, the things I read on Wikipedia or whatnot, how they were able to come together. Because like you're exactly right, with ORID, with what we do, we're trying to connect, be able to manage multiple assets, and a single solution, a single chain. So we're really trying to bring that together.
Yeah, I wonder if there are dexes and bridges, like, from this planet and that planet. They just kind of said, okay, let's work on each other. We're going to trade. And
right. Yeah.
They don't cover that all that much, right? All they talk about is these credit chips and these credit cards. I even remember, I think it was in one of the original movies, they had in the Death Star, you can actually go to one of the panels and access your credits. So when I was rewatching that the other day, I kept thinking, wait, does that mean the Death Star is almost like a custodian provider? Like, your assets are stored in a place where it's highly secure, obviously. But at the same time, you can get access to it, so you don't have to really worry about, carrying the wallet or the credit card wallet or whatnot.
Right.
Do you recall that?
Yeah. No, I remember
seeing that.
Yeah, I saw that. So it's like on the Death Star, you could like go to a store, like a marketplace or whatever, right, to go purchase something, and you'd have like a debit code. Which the first thing I thought when I saw that is like, that's a private key, right? It's like a code that you have. It's just a private key, right? So that was the big thing I drew from that is like, wait, like you didn't have to have a physical wallet. You didn't need to have a debit card. You just had to have sole access to that private key, and it was on a public ledger, I'm assuming, or maybe it's the Death Star, so it might have been permissioned. But that's how you access your funds, is just with that code.
Crazy. Well, I guess in the real world, right? You go to an ATM and you withdraw with your PIN. So in a sense, is similar in that regard. But in our world, the ATMs only work in your own jurisdiction.
Right.
I can't use the same PIN when I go somewhere else, right? And you can't do that either. We live in different parts of the world, so it's really not as interconnected that way. However, with crypto and crypto wallets and private keys and access control, actually you can access your wallet anywhere in the world, right? It's on the public blockchain. It is very similar in that sense. So it's almost amazing. The writers of Star Wars and George Lucas and the whole team kind of thought about things so far out, and our real world is almost mimicking the development of where some of these things are going. Amazing. Right. Yeah. Amazing.
I would love to see like if George Lucas were to ever come back, because like in like the episode 1, 2, and 3, he got so into the political side of things, like so much into really like shaping the landscape. I can imagine, in today's world, if he ever to do a movie again or do a TV show, like he might talk about the financial side of things and how that works. That'd be kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you what have caught your interest lately in the Star Wars ecosystem? What piqued your interest? Is it the upcoming Kenobi series? What did you think about the Book of Boba Fett? You want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I am just first off grateful that like we're gonna have Star Wars for years to come. Like back in 2012 before Disney bought it out. Even though the whole Disney buyout was good in some ways, not perfect in others. But for me, it's like I just get to experience Star Wars because I actually missed out on like the original movies, right? I was born in 1994. I came to it at a later date. Like my origin story of how I got into Star Wars, a lot of it started with the prequels, right? And then I really discovered like episode 5, which by the way, I am so happy that I am on episode 5 of your podcast, because that is my personal favorite. I just need to throw that out there. But yeah, I'm really excited for the Kenobi series, of course. I really like that Dave Filoni is really leading like the creative side. Because I grew up on like in high school, I watched a lot of the Clone Wars animated series. So that was Dave Filoni and George Lucas doing that. So I'm a huge Dave Filoni fan. He's up here in San Francisco, so I gotta get a dinner with him sometime. But really just seeing him have such a strong impact on the TV shows now, and then the Ahsoka series. So Ahsoka is my favorite character, so I'm really excited for that. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I wonder when is the Ahsoka series coming out? I don't recall seeing a date.
There hasn't been a date yet, but it's supposed to be this year, so I feel like late this year.
I think they did a really good job in the Book of Boba Fett and in the Mandalorian as well, obviously, to kind of lead into what some of these characters would be doing. So I think that's really fascinating, and it creates this linkage from one series to another, and you're branching out in really developing the character and also the new characters that may be surrounding it as well. I find it quite fascinating. On my last episode, I actually interviewed a film producer who's also a blockchain enthusiast. And he was so we were talking briefly about the Star Wars franchise, right? And little old me, right? I was thinking, so the movie series, the film financing aspect, obviously works for probably more the independent films, less so about the franchise, big commercial, backer, studio backed films. He says that's true, that the financing aspect is probably more geared towards the independent film. But then the notion of crypto and the NFT and the metaverse can really tie in even for the largest films, like Star Wars and Marvel and all of those, because there's so much artifacts that will come out of it. There will be games that are built around it. So there are going to be a whole ecosystem created within them. So I think this notion of really taking kind of digital media, digital entertainment, and crypto and blockchain and bringing that together, well, this is now yet another industry that is jumping into the foray, and it's actually creating something new. It's fascinating, and maybe one day, I've never shown anyone this, but this is a little plate.
Oh my God!
That I've created
that
before.
That is awesome. May the force be with you. R2 and BB. I love that. That is so cool. Yeah. I got some. Yeah, I got my Yoda here, my baby Yoda.
There you go. There you go. I mean, all of these things, right? These things could potentially be an NFT, right? Like So one of a kind, hand drawn by Sean Lee. I'm not no one famous, but still, it's Sean Lee. But things like these, combining that in a community effort and combining and drawing and continue to promote the franchise and the brand, could be actually something quite interesting. And I'm pretty sure, people are looking into that, and maybe the producers would start going down that route too.
Yes. Well, hey, who better than the two of us to help Disney get their IP on chain? I mean, let's talk to them. Let's get this done. I think one of the interesting things, kind of like about NFTs and really like so as a kid, I played a lot of Star Wars games, right? So like Star Wars: The Old Republic was a game I played. Right. I was big into sports. I was competitive. Had a little bit of a business sense. But I always thought of what was I as a kid, and what were those things that lead to who I am as an adult, or kind of the things that I pursue as an adult. And one of the reasons I'm very passionate about of crypto and play to earn gaming and the kind of capabilities that we can grow here. I used to play Star Wars: The Old Republic, right? It's this game, you can go on adventures, level up your character, do all these things. Right. And I would play the game and enjoy it until I found the marketplace. So once I learned that there was an internal marketplace that I can buy and sell things, and I can arbitrage that marketplace, I became obsessed. So I would I'd find these, okay, you can go on and people will sell this item that, is in abundance, right? You can get it, you can buy it for super cheap, but some people who are leveling up or trying to do this certain thing are willing to pay a premium because they just need 5 of them. So if I can just buy all the cheap ones, quarter of the market, and then sell those. So I learned how to arbitrage. I got involved in these marketplaces, and I thought it's if I as a kid had play to earn gaming, if those were real assets that I owned that weren't in a centralized database, so it was an NFT that I could then, once I stopped playing the game, still own it or sell it or use it, that would be my dream as a kid. That would inspire me so much. Wow, I'm able to use this to make real money, right? So one of the reasons, and it's really cool because at AIKON we get to partner with so many play to earn gamings, and a lot of my conversations are with these play to earn games, and it's it just drives me. It's this is what I would have loved to seen built as little Kion, right? So I'm helping shaping that future for the next kid who has similar interests. So I think that's a cool kind of tie-in. It's a lot of fun.
It is. I mean, I've got a few years on you, but I was a gamer at one point. And you're right. I mean, a lot of the games that we play, they're all single systems, right? So even if you can earn the gems or the credits or whatever they call them, it's stuck in the game, right? So there are private marketplaces out there that allows you to trade, but you're still kind of stuck in there. And once you pass all the you beat all the big bosses and everything else, then what happens, right? And multiplayer games can only go so far unless there are new contents being generated by the community, because from the same game developers, there's only so much they can do. I mean, it speaks so true to decentralization, don't you think about it, right? It's the community effort in co-creating something new rather than a centralized authority. But now with blockchain games, especially blockchain games that are released by portfolio companies where they're interconnected, so things that you've created here can be used over on this side and so on and so forth. And even though they're now starting to have kind of like metaverse banking services that allows you to stake your assets and lend your assets, you can borrow your assets, you can collateralize your my God, I mean that whole ecosystem is just expanding like there's no tomorrow. It's crazy. I only wish I'm younger. I still have the energy and the focus to play games like you guys do. But I look at the development side of it, and it's fascinating. I think it's definitely going the right direction.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's like, and I'm kind of the same way where I don't have the energy or the time to play these games anymore. But it's like, I remember as a kid how important that was to me, and just seeing like, kind of real world applications coming out of that. But you're right, like I'm excited to see, like, I really want to see developers come like, okay, these NFT assets in my game, we're going to make them compatible with a different developer community, right? Like seeing that kind of crossover, right. I think will be a big step in really creating these like NFT assets that are truly decentralized and can, provide value in multiple places.
The first thing I was thinking about actually was, you think about all these Star Wars games out there, right? On different console, obviously owned by different, different producers. And get different developers. Like, just think about it. If you're playing like a squadron, right? And you've got the helmet, and you can customize your helmet, and you can wear that in different games. I mean, how cool would that be?
Exactly.
Right? It'd be totally personalized. You own it, verifiable on the blockchain, and and that is yours, right? Your outfit. I mean, everything. It's just like it would be phenomenal. To be able to do that. I only hope that, you talk a little bit about kind of Disney owning it. There's the good and the, well, not I wouldn't say bad, but I mean, there's some parts that are very good and some part that could be done better, right? But if they could start thinking about it from that perspective and really create a whole economy around just one franchise, and that economy isn't just surrounding, goods and the movie rights and box office, but also assets. The assets are going to be worth a lot, and that's just a whole new way to generate revenue. It's just incredible.
And it's an ecosystem, right? They're building out an ecosystem of the movies, of the games, of that, like all that will keep growing and growing. And it's like, again, like you said, like you buy an NFT, you can use it in the game, and then it's something, movie related, or it's just part of this ecosystem. I think it's really exciting to see brands in general, of course, Star Wars, but brands in general, like move on chain. And it just, that's kind of what our job is, to really set up the infrastructure to make it where they can come on, and it's easy for them, again, helping Web 2 come on to Web 3.
All right, so we're coming to the end of our show. I normally ask the question at the end of it, and it's typically, who's your favorite character, which one is your favorite movie or whatnot. You already answered both of them. So I'm going to ask you something a little bit different. In the upcoming Kenobi series, which character do you want to show up in that series that will surprise you the most?
Oof. So I can tell you what I want to see the most in the Kenobi series. What I really want to see is a flashback scene of, in the Clone Wars time, a flashback scene of Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor, right, of Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka in live action on like an elevator, like on Coruscant, like in an elevator scene, just a small conversation. Okay. That would surprise me. That would bring me together, because I never got to see those three in the movies. It was only in the animated series. So that to me would just make my world. Like I'd fall apart. I love it.
And the scene that I would love the most between the three of them would be as Ahsoka is walking away.
Oh my God.
Walking out of the council, right? And basically saying, you know what? I don't like this anymore. This is not in the directions that I was going in. And then walking away. Like that whole, at the end of one of the episodes, right? I mean, that would have been quite interesting. All right. Well, amazing. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. Maybe someone's watching this and say, hey, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
At least we know the two of them are going to be in there.
Right.
Right? We know for sure the two of them are going to be in there.
Yep.
It's just whether Ahsoka or Rosario was going to be in the movie, but we are in the series. We just don't know that yet.
Yeah,
so much secrecy.
I know.
So much secrecy.
But hey, that's the surprise, right? If they would have announced it, then it wouldn't be as much of a surprise. So it'd be great to. That would be the surprise too. That would be really amazing.
Right.
And before we get off, I do have to ask you, Sean. So one of the things that I love about Star Wars is that it's multi-generational, right? Like I came in it to a different time. Like everyone kind of is able to come into it at a different time. I want to hear your origin story as a kid when you're first introduced, because that's one thing I just love hearing about different fans.
All right. Well, I love it. I love it. My guest asking me a question. I have to say, so like I said, I've got a few years on you, right? So when I watched it, it was the original. It was episode 4, 5, and 6. And as a very young kid, I don't even know why my parents actually brought me to watch Star Wars. I remember I was pretty young. And every time Darth Vader comes out, I would be very excited because I always thought he was going to lift his mask or lift his whole helmet and everything else.
Interesting.
And he never did until the very, very end. And every time he comes out with that dark voice, I would be excited. But then when I get home, I'll have bad dreams. I'll scream. I'll cry. So I remember that vividly, even though I was young. But it was just so that iconic image. And the voice and the action, like he wasn't doing all that much. I think in the later series, in the more updated ones, he was doing a lot more fighting and so on and so forth. But in the original, he wasn't doing all that much. It's just his sheer presence that are in there. So to me, that's what kind of got me really hooked. Now, don't call me to be on the dark side, okay? So you know, I'm not. But I really like both sides. It's just that imagery. It's much more than you may see Yoda here. So you might think Yoda's my favorite character. Yes, but I'd say the one that really hit me the most is Darth Vader. Vader is it. And even the only game I play right now is Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. So it's a RPG game. Sorry, not RPG game. It's like a turn-based game, and you collect items and you can upgrade your characters. I've been playing that for like 4 or 5 years now. And every time I use Darth Vader, right, and I still feel like, oh, I am this presence. I'm swinging my sword. I'm doing my blade throw. I'm doing my force crush, and this is like, there's something in it. Maybe I'm a Darth Vader underneath. Who knows?
No, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, and like to tie in Darth Vader. So Episode 5 is by far my favorite movie. And as a kid, my grandma used to babysit me a lot, and I was the easiest kid to babysit because it's like, hey, Kion, like, what do you want to do today? I want to watch Star Wars. And for me, that was Episode 5. But so I would watch it, 3 days a week for like a full year. And they're like, is this kid okay? Like, is everything good? And I was like, no, I just love it. It's great. I can watch the same movie and over again. I'm having a great time.
My favorite episode is actually Rogue One.
Really? So out of the new ones, I love Rogue One. I feel like it felt like an old episode, right? It felt like original Star Wars.
Well, it's in the same time zone. Right. It's in the same time series, right? It's around there. But it's independent. It's very intense, beginning to the end. And I like that, the heroes kind of, sacrifice themselves at the end for the greater good. Like that hits you. Yeah. It's they're doing something not for themselves but for the greater good. And hopefully, maybe as a wrap up, what we're doing in the crypto industry and the broader kind of blockchain ecosystem is also trying to improve upon what we have today. It's not that it's broken, but things can be improved upon. And I think all of these things, the tools, the capabilities, the various different assets and the management around it can really help people, not only in places that you and I live, which is predominantly developed countries, but also in underprivileged communities. This is where I think a lot of the potential for financial inclusion, environmental sustainability, I think that's really where it's going to come from. So hopefully we see that. And Kion, thank you so much. This was a wonderful, fun episode.
Yes.
I love talking about this, and maybe we can find another time and find another topic within the Star Wars ecosystem that we can touch on.
Yeah, man, that would be a lot of fun. I really appreciate you having me on. This has been a great time. Again, Star Wars and crypto, I'm always down to talk, so look forward to having another conversation about this again, man. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you,
Take
Sean.
care. Bye-bye.
Take care.